My name is Jessica Reynolds, and I'm 31 years old. I never expected my Thanksgiving homecoming to turn into a nightmare. After building my graphic design career in New York for 7 years, I thought returning to Connecticut would be a warm family reunion. Instead, I arrived early to help with dinner and froze in the hallway as I witnessed something unthinkable. My mother Claire and sister Amanda hunched over documents, practicing my signature. My stomach dropped as I heard whispered mentions of loan applications and credit checks. Before continuing my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever had that moment when family betrayal blindsided you completely. Growing up in our modest colonial home in Lakeville, Connecticut, we were the picture-perfect family on our street. Dad worked as an engineer, Mom sold real estate, and my sister Amanda and I shared the upstairs bathroom where we'd fight over counter space and hairdryers. Those were simpler times, before Dad left when I was 17 and Amanda was 14, changing our family dynamic forever. The divorce hit Mom hard. Claire Reynolds had built her identity around being the successful realtor wife of a respected engineer. Suddenly, she was a single mother with a mortgage and 2 teenagers. I remember the night she sat us down at the kitchen table, her eyes red-rimmed but determined, promising that nothing would change. "We're still going to be okay," she insisted, squeezing our hands. But things did change. The expensive family vacations stopped. Mom worked longer hours. Amanda became quieter, more withdrawn. I escaped to college on a partial scholarship 2 years later, throwing myself into graphic design with a passion that surprised even me. While Amanda struggled through high school back home, I was building my portfolio and making connections. By my senior year, I had internship offers from 3 New York agencies. The day I told Mom I was moving to New York after graduation, I saw something flicker across her face, pride mixed with abandonment. "You always were meant for bigger things," she said, hugging me tightly. "Just don't forget about us small-town folks." The 7 years since had been a whirlwind of success for me. After paying my dues at a prestigious agency, I launched my own freelance business 3 years ago. Now I worked with clients ranging from fashion startups to financial institutions, commanding rates that still sometimes surprised me. My small but stylish apartment in Brooklyn was a far cry from our family home, but it was mine bought and paid for with my own hard-earned money. Meanwhile, life hadn't been as kind to Mom and Amanda. Mom's real estate agency closed during the market downturn 2 years ago. She'd told me she was doing just fine with part-time work at a local boutique, but her emails became less frequent, her voice more strained during our monthly calls. Amanda had married her high school boyfriend right after college, but the marriage collapsed last year. She moved back in with Mom temporarily, a situation that had now stretched to 15 months. I tried to help when I could. When Amanda's car needed a new transmission last year, I sent her the money as a birthday gift. When Mom mentioned the roof was leaking, I paid for the repairs. But I'd been careful to maintain boundaries. Growing up with financial insecurity after Dad left had made me perhaps too cautious with money. I had substantial savings, yes, but I also had business expenses, taxes, and the constant freelancer's worry about future work drying up. The tension about money was subtle but present. Mom would casually mention friends whose children bought them cruises for Christmas. Amanda would make comments about my fancy clients or ask if my shoes were real designer. I tried not to flaunt my success when I visited, but I also refused to apologize for it. I'd worked incredibly hard for everything I had. This Thanksgiving was supposed to be our reconnection. I hadn't been home in almost 8 months. A business trip to London and then a major website overhaul for a client had kept me chained to my desk. I'd sent gifts and called regularly, but it wasn't the same as being there. So, I'd planned this 4-day weekend carefully, bringing expensive wine and ingredients for my signature apple cranberry pie that Amanda loved. I'd even splurged on early Christmas presents, a cashmere sweater for Mom and concert tickets for Amanda. The drive from New York had been peaceful, the fall foliage still clinging to some trees despite the late November date. I sang along to my favorite playlist and practiced what I'd say to Mom about potentially helping her update her resume. I thought about offering to help Amanda look for apartments in the new year. I was going to be the returning hero, sharing my success in ways that would lift them up too. I arrived around 2 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving Day. The house looked the same as always, white with dark green shutters. The wreath on the door already displaying Christmas colors. I let myself in with my old key, calling out as I stepped into the familiar entryway. "Hello, I'm home early." Something smelled so good I had to speed the whole way. The house had that Thanksgiving smell: sage, roasting turkey, and the cinnamon air freshener Mom always plugged in for the holidays. But there was no answer to my call, which was strange. Mom's car was in the driveway, and she'd texted an hour ago that she and Amanda were elbow deep in pie dough. I set my bags down in the hallway and walked toward the kitchen, expecting to find them there. The kitchen was empty, though evidence of cooking was everywhere: a bowl of potato peelings, pie crusts cooling on racks, the turkey basting in the oven. I checked the timer. 45 minutes remaining. "Mom? Amanda?" I called again, heading toward the living room. That's when I heard the murmuring from my father's old study, now Mom's bill-paying and household management center. The door was partially open, and I could hear my sister's voice, uncharacteristically serious. "No, you have to curve the J more like this. See her Christmas card? The J in Jessica has this little hook at the bottom." I froze mid-step in the hallway, my hand automatically reaching out to steady myself against the wall. My sister's words didn't make sense at first. Why would Amanda be practicing writing my name? A bizarre thought flashed through my mind. Maybe they were labeling Christmas presents early or making me a personalized decoration. But the serious tone, the secretive murmuring, the closed door, everything felt wrong. I inched closer to the study door, careful to avoid the creaky floorboard near the hall closet. From my new position, I could see a sliver of the room through the partially open door. Mom sat at the desk, her reading glasses perched on her nose. A document spread in front of her. Amanda stood beside her, leaning over her shoulder, pointing at something on the paper. On the desk was a collection of items that made my blood run cold. My old passport that I thought was in the attic storage box, what looked like my birth certificate, and several sheets of paper where someone had been practicing signatures, my signature. "The bank said the online application looks good, but we need the signed documents returned by Monday," Mom was saying. Her voice hushed despite thinking they were alone in the house. "If we mail them tomorrow, that should be fine." "And you're sure they won't actually call her to verify?" Amanda asked, chewing on her lower lip, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "The loan officer said all communication will be through the email we provided. Jessica never has to know." Mom picked up a pen and attempted to sign my name on what appeared to be a practice sheet. "How's that?" Amanda shook her head. Too hesitant. Jessica signs quickly, confidently. "Here, let me try again." My sister took the pen and, to my horror, produced a signature that looked eerily like mine. She'd clearly been practicing for some time. "That's it. That's perfect," Mom exclaimed, with disturbing enthusiasm. "Now, let's try it on the actual application." A wave of nausea washed over me as Amanda turned to a formal-looking document and signed my name with frightening precision. I could see the loan company logo at the top of the page, though I couldn't make out the details for my position. My heart thundered so loudly in my ears I was certain they would hear it. I felt like I was watching a scene from a movie. This couldn't possibly be my mother and sister, the two people I trusted most in the world, committing fraud using my identity. Yet there they were, calmly discussing the best way to forge my signature, talking about loan applications and banks, as if what they were doing was completely normal. I must have made a sound, a gasp, or maybe the floor creaked beneath my weight, because suddenly Amanda's head snapped up, her eyes darting toward the door. I backed away silently, my designer boots thankfully quiet on the hardwood floor. I retreated to the front door, opened it, and then closed it loudly. "Hello? Anybody home?" "It's me," I called out, my voice unnaturally high as I tried to act as if I'd just arrived. There was a flurry of activity from the study papers, shuffling, drawers closing. By the time I made my way back down the hallway, Mom was emerging from the study, her cheeks flushed. "Jessica, sweetheart! We didn't hear you come in." She embraced me tightly, and I forced myself to return the hug, my arms wooden. Over her shoulder, I could see Amanda hurriedly exiting the study from the other door, her hands suspiciously empty. "Just got here," I lied, my mouth dry. The drive was good. Hardly any traffic. "You're early. We weren't expecting you until 4, Mom said, leading me toward the kitchen. "The turkey needs another hour, at least." I nodded mechanically, my mind racing. Should I confront them now? Demand to know what they were doing with my personal information? But I needed to know more. How far had this gone? Was this the first time, or had they done this before? "I think I need some air after that long drive," I said suddenly. "I'm going to take a quick spin around town, see what's changed. I'll be back in time to help with the final dinner prep." Mom looked surprised, but nodded. "Of course, honey. Amanda and I have everything under control here." Those words "under control" echoed in my head as I practically fled to my car. Once inside, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, trying to steady my breathing. What had they done? What were they planning to do? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? I drove aimlessly through the familiar streets of my hometown, barely registering the holiday decorations already adorning the lampposts on Main Street. My mind was cataloging every piece of financial information they might have access to. My old bank statements sometimes still came to Mom's house, though I'd switched to paperless years ago. Did they have my social security number? Of course they did. My mother had filed my taxes when I was younger. What about current account information? I kept that secure, but had I ever logged into my accounts on my laptop during a visit home? Had I left any financial documents behind during my moves? By the time I circled back to the house an hour later, I had decided on a strategy. Say nothing, observe everything, and investigate when they weren't watching. Thanksgiving dinner would proceed as planned. And then tonight, after they were asleep, I would find out exactly what my family had been up to behind my back. I plastered a smile on my face as I re-entered the house, determined to play the part of the oblivious daughter and sister. But as I hugged Amanda hello, noting how she couldn't quite meet my eyes, I wondered if I would ever be able to trust my family again. The dining room table had been extended to its full length and covered with Mom's best tablecloth, the ivory one with delicate embroidery that only came out for special occasions. The good china gleamed under the soft light of the chandelier, and fall-themed centerpieces with mini pumpkins and golden leaves stretched down the center of the table. Any other year, I would have appreciated Mom's efforts to make the holiday special. This year, the perfect tableau felt like a stage set for an uncomfortable play we were all about to perform. "Jessica, would you put these serving spoons out while I check on the turkey?" Mom asked, her voice overly bright as she handed me the silverware. "Sure thing," I replied, matching her false cheerfulness. I watched her disappear into the kitchen, noting how she'd changed into a different sweater since I'd first arrived, as if erasing evidence of what she'd been doing earlier. Amanda was arranging wine glasses at each place, setting her movements jerky and nervous. She'd always been terrible at hiding her emotions. "So how's the job hunt going?" I asked casually, placing spoons beside each serving dish. Amanda's hand trembled slightly, almost toppling a glass. "Oh, not great. The market around here is pretty dead." She forced a laugh. Not everyone can be a hotshot New York designer. There it was, that familiar mixture of admiration and resentment. But now it carried a darker undertone. Was this how she justified what they were doing? Because I had more, so it was somehow okay to take from me? "I could put out some feelers for remote positions," I offered, studying her reaction. "A lot of companies are flexible about that now." "Maybe," she said non-committally. "Let's not talk about depressing stuff today, okay? It's Thanksgiving." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of Uncle Bob, Mom's younger brother, and Aunt Margaret, his wife of 30 years. Their appearance was a relief buffers in what was quickly becoming an intensely uncomfortable family gathering. "There's my successful niece." Uncle Bob boomed, wrapping me in a bear hug that smelled of aftershave and the outdoors. "How's life in the big city treating you?" "Can't complain," I said, returning his embrace. Uncle Bob had always been the family jokester, quick with a pun or silly story. Today, his presence felt like a life raft in choppy emotional waters. Aunt Margaret kissed my cheek, then held me at arm's length. "You look tired, dear. Are you working too hard?" "Just busy with clients," I said, avoiding mentioning what was really causing the strain in my face. We moved to the living room for pre-dinner drinks, and I observed my mother and sister carefully. Mom was in full hostess mode, refreshing drinks and laughing too loudly at Uncle Bob's jokes. Amanda kept glancing at her phone, typing quick messages to someone. As we finally sat down to dinner, the turkey golden and glistening at the center of the table, I noticed how Mom steered the conversation whenever it veered toward finances or my work in New York. "Jessica, tell everyone about that cute cafe you mentioned near your apartment." She would interject when Aunt Margaret asked about my recent projects. The meal progressed with an undercurrent of tension that only I seemed aware of. Uncle Bob regaled us with stories about the neighborhood raccoon that had outsmarted his raccoon-proof bird feeder. Aunt Margaret talked about her garden club's winter plans. On the surface, it was a normal family Thanksgiving. But I caught the knowing glances between my mother and sister. I noticed how Amanda asked seemingly casual questions about my bank. "Do you still use First National?" I was thinking of switching. "How's their mobile app?" she asked, pushing mashed potatoes around her plate. "It's fine," I replied carefully. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," she said quickly. "Banking is so different these days, isn't it? Everything can be done online." Mom jumped in immediately. "Margaret, did I tell you about the new boutique that opened downtown? They have those handmade soaps you like." The abrupt subject change wasn't subtle. Aunt Margaret looked puzzled but followed along. Uncle Bob, bless him, remained oblivious to the undercurrents, helping himself to a third serving of stuffing. Midway through the meal, I excused myself to use the restroom. Once alone, I leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me appeared normal, the same brown hair I'd recently had highlighted, the same green eyes I'd inherited from Dad, but inside I felt hollow with betrayal. I splashed cold water on my face and took several deep breaths. "Just get through dinner," I told myself. "Tonight, you'll find answers." When I returned to the table, dessert was being served: Mom's pumpkin pie and my apple cranberry creation. The conversation had turned to holiday shopping and Black Friday sales. I read an article about identity theft being especially bad during the holidays, I said casually as I took my seat. Apparently, fraudsters take advantage of all the extra online shopping. The effect was immediate. Mom's fork clattered against her plate, and Amanda suddenly became intensely interested in the pattern on the tablecloth. "Is that right?" Uncle Bob said. Oblivious to my mother's discomfort, "Margaret's cousin had her credit card stolen last year. What a mess that was to clean up." "Yes," I continued, looking directly at my sister. "The article said the worst kind is when it's someone close to you, someone who has your personal information. Family fraud, they called it." Amanda's face drained of color. Mom quickly stood up, gathering empty dessert plates with shaking hands. "Who's ready for coffee?" she asked too loudly. "I also have that peppermint tea you like, Margaret." As the evening wound down, the performance grew more strained. By the time Uncle Bob and Aunt Margaret left, promising to return for Christmas dinner, I was emotionally exhausted from maintaining the facade. Mom and Amanda seemed equally drained, making quick excuses to retire early. "The turkey always makes me so sleepy," Mom said, suppressing a clearly fake yawn. "Jessica, you remember where the extra blankets are if you get cold? Your room is all made up." I nodded, wishing them good night while silently counting the minutes until I could begin my investigation. I waited in my childhood bedroom for 2 hours, listening to the house settle into its nighttime creaks and sighs. My old twin bed with its floral comforter felt foreign after years of sleeping on my queen-sized mattress in New York. The walls, still decorated with a few of my high school art projects that Mom had proudly preserved, seemed to close in around me as I contemplated what I was about to do. At 12:30 a.m., I slipped out of bed, already dressed in leggings and a sweatshirt. I'd left my boots by the bed and now carried them in one hand as I crept down the hallway in sock feet. Mom's bedroom door was closed, a thin line of darkness showing beneath it. Amanda was staying in her old room across the hall, and soft snoring confirmed she was asleep. The study door wasn't fully closed, and it opened silently when I pushed it. I slipped inside and used the flashlight on my phone to navigate to the desk, careful to avoid the one squeaky floorboard near the bookshelf, a childhood knowledge that now served a purpose I never could have imagined. The desktop was cleared of the incriminating evidence I'd seen earlier. I wasn't surprised. They would have hidden everything after my almost discovery. I started with the desk drawers, finding nothing in the top two beyond office supplies and old greeting cards. The bottom drawer was locked. Mom had always kept a spare key taped underneath the desk, a hiding place she thought was clever, but that Amanda and I had discovered during an unauthorized childhood exploration. I reached under the desk, my fingers searching along the wood, and felt a wave of validation when they touched the small metal key still hidden in the same spot. The drawer opened smoothly to reveal a manila folder labeled tax documents. Inside, I found what I was looking for: loan applications, credit card applications, and a sheaf of papers with practiced versions of my signature. My hands trembled as I spread the documents across the desk. The first was a personal loan application for $25,000 from Northeastern Federal Credit Union. The form was filled out with my information, my social security number, my address, my employment details, all correct and meticulously entered. At the bottom was my forged signature, executed with frightening accuracy. The loan purpose was listed as home renovation. Next was a mortgage refinancing application for Mom's house. This one showed her as the primary applicant but listed me as a co-signer, using my income to qualify for a better rate and higher loan amount. The documents indicated they were trying to pull $50,000 in equity from the house. 3 credit card applications followed, all in my name, requesting cards with high credit limits. One had already been approved according to an accompanying letter, with the card sent to a P.O. box I didn't recognize. My mouth went dry as I continued looking through the folder. They had copies of my driver's license, passport, and even a utility bill from my apartment. How had they gotten that? I remembered sending Mom pictures of my renovated kitchen last year. The bill must have been visible on my counter in one of the photos. I turned to Mom's computer, which was fortunately not password protected. In her email, I found correspondence with the banks, credit card companies, and loan officers. They'd created an email address that looked similar to mine, changing just one letter in a way that would be easy to miss. There were screenshots of my social media posts where my signature was partially visible, including a post where I'd shared a contract signing with a major client, proudly displaying the moment without realizing I was exposing my signature to the world. My heart pounding, I opened a private browser window and logged into my credit monitoring service. There, the extent of the damage became clear. 2 new credit cards had been opened in my name within the last month. The loan for $25,000 had already been approved and funded 3 days ago. There were inquiries from 4 different financial institutions, all within the past 2 months. I felt physically ill as I continued digging. A quick search through another folder on the computer labeled bills revealed why they might have been driven to such desperate measures. Mom's house had entered pre-foreclosure status. There were 3 months of missed mortgage payments and a formal notice from the bank. Medical bills for Mom totaling over $12,000 were marked Final Notice and Collection Agency. Amanda had maxed out credit cards of her own, with statements showing minimum payments that barely covered the interest. They were drowning financially, and they had decided that using my identity was their life raft. I sat back in the desk chair, my mind racing. Part of me understood their desperation. Mom had always been proud, rarely asking for help even when she needed it. Amanda had struggled in my shadow for years, her own accomplishments always seeming lesser in comparison. But understanding didn't erase the betrayal. They hadn't just borrowed my sweater without asking or used my car without permission. They had stolen my identity, damaged my credit, and put my financial security at risk. If I hadn't caught them, how far would this have gone? The sound of footsteps in the hallway jolted me from my thoughts. I quickly gathered the documents, taking photos of each with my phone, before returning them to the folder and relocking the drawer. I shut down the computer and slipped back to my room just as the bathroom door closed down the hall. Lying in bed, wide awake despite the late hour, I formulated a plan. Tomorrow wasn't just going to be Black Friday, it was going to be the day of reckoning for the Reynolds family. Morning arrived with the soft winter light filtering through my childhood bedroom curtains. I hadn't slept more than a few restless hours, my mind cycling through what I'd discovered and what I planned to do about it. I lay in bed listening to the household awakening, the coffee maker gurgling downstairs, the shower running, Mom's bedroom door opening and closing. I dressed carefully in jeans and a sweater, nothing that suggested the emotional confrontation to come. When I entered the kitchen, Mom was at the stove making pancakes, my favorite breakfast growing up. Amanda sat at the table with a mug of coffee, scrolling through her phone. Both looked up with smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. "Good morning, sweetheart." Mom's voice was overly cheerful. "I thought we'd have a nice breakfast before everyone hits the Black Friday sales. There's a great deal on TVs at Best Buy I was thinking of checking out." The normalcy of the scene was surreal after what I'd discovered. Were they really planning to go shopping as if nothing had happened? As if they hadn't committed multiple felonies using my identity? "Actually," I said, pouring myself coffee with a steady hand that surprised me, "I was hoping we could talk first. All three of us." Something in my tone must have signaled this wasn't a casual conversation. Mom's spatula paused mid-flip, and Amanda's fingers froze on her phone screen. "Of course," Mom said after a beat, turning off the burner. "Is everything okay? Did something happen at work?" "Let's sit in the living room," I suggested, not answering her question. They followed me silently, exchanging a glance I pretended not to notice. We arranged ourselves awkwardly, Mom and Amanda on the sofa, me in the armchair facing them. The Christmas tree in the corner was already up but undecorated, waiting for what was supposed to be a family decorating session later today. I took a deep breath, my rehearsed speech suddenly evaporating. Instead, I went with direct honesty. "I need to ask you both about some documents I saw yesterday. Loan applications, credit card applications, documents with my name and information on them." The color drained from Mom's face. Amanda looked down at her hands, her shoulders hunching forward as if to make herself smaller. "I don't know what you're talking about," Mom said, but her voice cracked on the last word. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the coffee table between us. Screen up to display the photos I'd taken of the forged documents. "I saw you yesterday when I arrived. I was in the hallway. I heard and saw everything in the study. And then last night, I found all of this." I swiped through the photos as I spoke. "I need you to tell me what's going on. Right now. All of it." Amanda burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. Mom sat frozen, staring at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. "Jessica." Mom started, then stopped, seemingly at a loss for words. "How long has this been happening?" I pressed. "And how much have you already taken out in my name?" The silence stretched for what felt like minutes before Amanda finally spoke through her tears. 6 months, she whispered. "It started 6 months ago. The medical bills came first," Mom continued, her voice hollow. "After my surgery, the insurance didn't cover as much as they promised. We tried everything else," Amanda added quickly. "Mom took out a personal loan. I picked up extra shifts at the restaurant. But then the mortgage fell behind, and they sent the foreclosure notice, and my car broke down completely." "So you decided to steal my identity?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "You decided to forge my signature and take out loans I didn't know about?" "We were going to pay it all back," Mom insisted, leaning forward. "You would never have known. We had a plan." "A plan?" I echoed incredulously. "A plan that involved committing fraud? Do you have any idea what you've done? This is identity theft. This is a felony. You could go to jail." "We were desperate." Mom's composure finally broke, tears streaming down her face. "What was I supposed to do? Lose the house? The house where you and your sister grew up? The only thing of value I have left? You could have asked me for help." I shot back. "You could have been honest about how bad things were. Would you have given us $25,000? Amanda challenged, her sadness suddenly shifting to defiance. "Would you have co-signed to refinance the house? You're always so careful with your money, Jessica. So protective of what you've built." Her words stung because there was a kernel of truth in them. Would I have given them that much money? I wasn't sure. And that uncertainty fueled my anger. That was my decision to make, not yours to take from me. I stood up, unable to remain seated with the adrenaline coursing through me. "You had no right to do this. No right to put my financial security at risk. Do you know what this could do to my credit? To my business if clients found out? We were going to pay it all back," Mom repeated weakly. With what money? I demanded. I saw the bills, Mom. I saw the collection notices. Where was this magical money going to come from to pay everything back? Neither of them had an answer. How much? I asked after a moment of tense silence. How much have you already taken out in my name? Mom and Amanda exchanged a glance. The personal loan was $25,000, Mom admitted. We used $17,000 to catch up on the mortgage and pay the most pressing medical bills. The rest was for Amanda's car repair and some other overdue bills. And the credit cards? I pressed. About $3,000 on one, Amanda said quietly. The other just arrived last week. We haven't used it yet. I paced the living room, running my hands through my hair in frustration. The betrayal cut deep, but beneath my anger was a painful realization my family had been struggling desperately, and I hadn't seen it. I'd accepted their assurances that everything was fine without pushing deeper. I need to know everything, I finally said, returning to my chair. Every account you've opened, every dollar you've spent, every piece of my information you've used. And then we need to decide what happens next. What do you mean, what happens next? Mom asked, fear evident in her voice. I looked at them both, my mother with her proud posture even in defeat, my sister with her red-rimmed eyes, and delivered the ultimatum that had formed in my mind overnight. Either you come completely clean right now and we figure out how to fix this together, or I call the police and report the identity theft. Those are your options. The shock on their faces told me they had never considered I might actually turn them in. The realization that I was serious seemed to finally break through the justifications they had built around their actions. We'll tell you everything, Mom whispered. For the next hour, they laid out the full extent of their scheme. It had indeed started 6 months ago when Mom's medical bills from an emergency gallbladder surgery had overwhelmed them. They had initially just planned to take out one small loan, but as their financial situation deteriorated, the fraud had expanded. They had used mail delivered to the family home addressed to me to gather information. They had gone through old tax documents stored in the attic. They had systematically built a file of my personal information, practicing my signature until they could reproduce it perfectly. As they talked, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, anger at their betrayal, empathy for their desperation, and guilt that I hadn't recognized how bad things had gotten. These were the women who had been my foundation, my support system throughout my life. Now they had become criminals, with me as their victim. When they finished their confession, a heavy silence filled the living room. Outside, neighbors were beginning their day after Thanksgiving, cars pulling out of driveways for shopping expeditions or family visits. Inside our house, 3 women sat in the wreckage of trust that might never be fully rebuilt. I need some time to think, I finally said, standing up. I'm going to go out for a while. Jessica. Please, Mom began, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. Not now. I can't. I just need some space. I grabbed my coat and purse and walked out of the house, unsure of where I was going but certain I couldn't stay there a moment longer. The small hotel on the edge of town hadn't changed since I was a teenager. The same faded sign, the same worn carpet in the lobby, the same painting of a local lighthouse hanging behind the reception desk. I checked in for one night, ignoring the curious look from the clerk, who clearly recognized me as a local girl but was too professional to ask why I needed a room in my hometown. Once alone in the generic room, I called the only person I could think of who might offer impartial advice. Mia Chen, my law school roommate from college who now worked at a firm specializing in financial crimes. Identity theft by family members is more common than you'd think, Mia said after I explained the situation. But that doesn't make it any less serious legally. What are the potential consequences? I asked, pacing the small room. If this were reported? Mia's sigh came through the phone clearly. For forging your signature on financial documents? It's fraud, Jess. Potentially multiple felony charges. Bank fraud, wire fraud, if they did any of this online identity theft. Depending on the amounts and your state laws, they could be looking at substantial fines and jail time. The word jail made my stomach clench. The image of my mother in a prison jumpsuit, of Amanda being led away in handcuffs, I couldn't bear it. But if I don't report it? I asked. If I try to handle this privately? You'd still need to dispute the fraudulent accounts with the credit bureaus and financial institutions, Mia explained. Most will ask for a police report. Without one, you might end up responsible for the debt they incurred in your name. I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, so I either send my family to jail or destroy my own credit and take on their debt? Those are the legal extremes, Mia acknowledged. But there may be middle ground. Some families work out repayment agreements. Sometimes the banks are willing to work with you if you explain the situation, especially if you can make arrangements to repay the money. After hanging up with Mia, I checked my phone. 5 missed calls from Mom, 3 from Amanda, and multiple text messages. Mom, please come home so we can talk. I'm so sorry. Amanda, we never meant to hurt you. Please answer your phone. Mom, whatever you decide, I understand. I love you. The last one broke something inside me. I curled up on the hotel bed and finally let myself cry for the betrayal, for the broken trust, for the desperate situation that had driven my family to such extreme measures. As the tears subsided, a new message came through from Amanda. Amanda, there's something else you should know. Mom didn't lose her job when the agency closed. She was already on medical leave and couldn't go back. She has been having health problems for over a year that she didn't tell you about. And my divorce wasn't just a growing apart thing. Brian controlled all our money and left me with nothing but debt. We tried getting legitimate loans, but were denied everywhere. I'm not saying what we did was right. It wasn't. But we were drowning, Jess. And too proud to admit it to you. The message added new layers to my understanding of their actions. Mom had been sick longer than I knew. Amanda had been financially abused by her ex-husband. They had tried other avenues before resorting to fraud. It didn't excuse what they'd done, but it helped me see more clearly how they had arrived at such a desperate decision. After a restless afternoon of soul-searching, I drove back to the house unannounced in the early evening. I let myself in quietly, hearing movement in the kitchen. Instead of announcing my presence, I paused in the hallway, listening. I've made such a mess of everything. Mom's voice, raw from crying. She'll never forgive us. And she shouldn't. We have to fix this somehow, Amanda replied. Maybe I can get a second job. Or sell my car. Your car barely runs as it is, Mom said with a hollow laugh. No, this is my fault. I'm the mother. I should have found another way. I moved to the kitchen doorway, observing them without being noticed. Mom sat at the table, sorting through bills with red past-due stamps clearly visible. Amanda was at the computer, scrolling through job listings. They looked defeated, smaller somehow than they had yesterday. I was thinking of applying for this night shift at the hospital, Amanda was saying. It's not great pay, but combined with the restaurant, maybe I could start paying Jessica back. She deserves better than us, Mom said softly, wiping a tear. She worked so hard for everything she has, and we just took from her. What kind of mother does that make me? The raw pain and genuine remorse in her voice broke through the last of my anger. I had been so focused on the betrayal that I hadn't fully processed the desperation that drove it. These weren't criminals plotting to exploit me, they were my family, drowning and grasping for any lifeline. I stepped into the kitchen, causing them both to look up in shock. Jessica! Mom stood quickly, knocking over the chair behind her. You came back. I never stopped loving you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Even when I was angriest, I never stopped loving you both. Amanda rushed to me, embracing me with tears streaming down her face. Mom joined more hesitantly, as if afraid I might reject her touch. Instead, I pulled her into our group hug, the 3 of us holding each other as we cried. When we finally separated, I knew what I needed to do. The betrayal still hurt. The trust was still broken. But family bonds ran deeper than even this breach. I couldn't send them to jail, but I also couldn't pretend nothing had happened. We needed a new path forward. We're going to fix this, I said firmly. All of us. Together. But things have to change completely and permanently. For the first time since discovering their deception, I saw hope flicker in their eyes. Not relief that they'd escaped consequences, but hope that our family might somehow survive this crisis intact. The next morning, we gathered around the kitchen table, not for pancakes or leftover turkey, but for a family meeting unlike any we'd ever had before. I'd spent half the night researching options and creating a plan, fueled by equal parts determination and black coffee from the hotel room. I placed a yellow legal pad in the center of the table, the word resolution written at the top in bold letters. "This is not going to be easy," I began, meeting both their eyes directly. "What you did was wrong, legally and morally. But I believe in second chances, and I believe in this family. So here's how this is going to work." Mom and Amanda sat with perfect posture, hands folded on the table, their faces a mixture of shame and hope. "First, complete transparency," I said, pointing to the first item on my list. "I need to know about every financial issue, every debt, every account, legitimate or fraudulent. No more secrets." "Absolutely." Mom agreed immediately. "Second, we're going to address the fraudulent accounts. I've researched our options, and here's what we need to do. I'm not filing a police report, but I will be contacting each financial institution. We'll explain that there was a family miscommunication, that these accounts were opened without my explicit permission, but that I'm willing to work with them on a resolution." "Will they believe that?" Amanda asked nervously. "Maybe not completely, but it gives them a way to work with us without triggering a fraud investigation. For the loan that's already been dispersed, we'll negotiate a repayment plan that all three of us will contribute to. The credit cards will be closed immediately." I turned to the next page of my notes. "Third, we need to address the underlying issues that led to this situation. Mom, you're going to need to sell this house." Mom's face paled. "Jessica, this is our family home. It's a financial burden you can no longer afford," I said, firmly but gently. "The mortgage is too high, the maintenance is too expensive, and the property taxes keep rising. You can find a nice apartment or condo that's more manageable." She looked ready to argue, then deflated slightly. "You're right. I just didn't want to admit it. Amanda," I continued, turning to my sister, "you need stable employment with growth potential, not just minimum wage jobs. I have contacts who might be able to help, but you need to be willing to consider training programs or courses to build marketable skills." Amanda nodded, looking both scared and determined. "I'll do whatever it takes." Finally, we all need professional help. I tapped the fourth item on my list. Financial counseling is non-negotiable. I've found a program that specializes in family financial recovery. And I hesitated, then pushed forward. "I think we should consider family therapy too. This situation didn't happen overnight. There are communication issues and relationship dynamics we need to address." Mom looked startled at the suggestion but didn't reject it. Amanda actually seemed relieved. "What about your credit score?" Mom asked quietly. "Will this hurt your business?" "It might," I acknowledged. "But I've built a good reputation and solid client relationships. If we act quickly, we can minimize the damage. My main concern is making sure nothing like this ever happens again." I turned to the next page, which detailed our immediate action items. "Today, we're going to call every financial institution involved. Together, we'll cancel what can be canceled and create repayment plans for the rest. Then we're going to sit down with a complete list of all your legitimate debts and create a realistic budget." I pulled out my laptop and opened a spreadsheet I'd created overnight. "I'm not going to lie, this will be painful. Mom, your house will likely need to go on the market after the holidays. Amanda, you'll need to contribute a significant portion of your income to debt repayment, and I'll be helping financially, but with structure and oversight." "That's more than fair," Mom said, wiping away a tear. "More than we deserve." "This isn't about what anyone deserves," I said, softening my tone. "It's about fixing a bad situation and making sure we all come out stronger." Over the next several hours, we made difficult phone calls. As expected, the financial institutions were skeptical of our miscommunication story. But when I offered to work out repayment plans rather than disputing the accounts completely, most were willing to cooperate. We closed the fraudulent credit cards, consolidated the loan debt, and created a payment schedule that would be challenging but manageable. The hardest call was to a credit monitoring service to place alerts on my accounts and ensure no additional fraudulent activity could occur. The representative asked several times if I wanted to report identity theft, and each time I declined, feeling Mom and Amanda's grateful gazes. By late afternoon, we had a comprehensive spreadsheet of all debts, medical bills, mortgage arrears, credit cards, personal loans, with payment plans for each. The total was staggering, but seeing it all laid out somehow made it less overwhelming. This was a problem with defined parameters. Difficult, yes, but not impossible. There's one more thing, I said as we finished reviewing the budget. I need your keys and your devices. They looked confused until I explained. I'm changing all my passwords, setting up two-factor authentication on every account, and placing a security freeze on my credit. And I need to make sure you don't have any copies of my personal identification documents. It was a painful moment, the physical manifestation of broken trust, but they complied without protest, handing over old keys to my apartment, deleting saved passwords from their devices, and retrieving all copies of my documents from their hiding places. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the kitchen, we sat in exhausted silence, the weight of the day's activities settling over us. I know we have a long way to go, Mom finally said, reaching hesitantly for my hand. But thank you for giving us a chance to make this right. Amanda nodded, adding softly, We're going to earn back your trust, Jess. Whatever it takes. I squeezed their hands, feeling the first small tendril of healing begin to take root. This is just the beginning, I said. But it is a beginning. That night, as I lay in my childhood bed for what might be one of the last times the house would likely be sold within months, I felt a complex mixture of sadness, resolve, and, surprisingly, hope. The family I knew had been irreparably changed by what had happened. But perhaps the family we could become might eventually be stronger, more honest, and more supportive than before. It wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, could never be fully restored to its original state. But maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the fragments, something imperfect but authentic, with stronger foundations than before. 6 months have passed since that fateful Thanksgiving when I discovered my mother and sister using my forged signature on loan applications. 6 months of rebuilding, restructuring, and reimagining our family relationships. The journey hasn't been easy, but it has been transformative in ways I never could have predicted. After careful consideration, I decided to temporarily relocate back to Connecticut, renting a small apartment just 15 minutes from my mother's new place. My design business was flexible enough to allow remote work, and my clients understood when I explained I needed to be closer to family for a while. This proximity has allowed me to be directly involved in implementing our financial recovery plan and rebuilding our fractured relationships. Our weekly family dinners have become a touchstone, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes emotional, but always honest. The initial awkwardness has gradually given way to more authentic connection than we'd had in years. There's something powerful about sitting across from people who have seen you at your worst and are still committed to moving forward together. Mom has made remarkable progress. The family home sold more quickly than expected, and though saying goodbye was painful, the relief on her face when the mortgage burden lifted was unmistakable. She found a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in a well-maintained complex with a small community garden she's become involved with. The downsizing process was cathartic, letting go of possessions and pretenses that had been weighing her down for years. She's working part-time at a local art gallery, a job that suits her eye for aesthetics without the pressure of her former real estate career. Her health has improved significantly with regular medical care and reduced stress. Most importantly, she's developed a new relationship with money, one based on reality rather than appearances. I spent so many years trying to maintain this image, she confessed during one of our financial counseling sessions. The perfect house, the successful career, the illusion that the divorce hadn't affected us financially. I was drowning but couldn't admit it, even to myself. Amanda's transformation has been equally significant. Initially resistant to accepting help that felt like charity, she eventually embraced the opportunity to rebuild her life. She secured an entry-level position at a marketing firm through one of my professional connections, and her natural creativity has already earned her recognition. She's taking online courses in digital marketing and building a portfolio that showcases her growing skills. I spent so long living in your shadow, she told me during a sister's lunch last month. I was jealous of your success instead of finding my own path. Now I finally feel like I'm building something that's uniquely mine. The financial aspect of our recovery plan has progressed steadily. The fraudulent loan is being repaid according to the schedule we established, with all three of us contributing. Mom and Amanda have adhered strictly to the budgets we created, and our monthly financial reviews have become increasingly positive. Our credit monitoring system remains in place, though the alerts and freezes no longer feel like accusations but rather prudent safeguards. I've helped them both improve their legitimate credit through responsible financial practices, and they've begun to establish their own healthy financial identities. The family therapy sessions were challenging at first, excavating decades of communication patterns, unspoken expectations, and simmering resentments. Mom struggled to acknowledge how her pride had prevented her from asking for help when she truly needed it. Amanda confronted her jealousy and the victim mentality she had developed after her divorce. I recognized my own role in our family dynamic, how my success and financial independence had created distance, how I'd failed to see their struggles beneath their assurances that everything was fine. Money is never just about money, our therapist observed during one particularly intense session. It's about power, security, worth, and love. How we handle financial relationships reflects our deeper emotional connections. Those words resonated deeply with all of us. The fraud wasn't just about needing money, it was about the complex web of pride, shame, jealousy, and love that defined our family. As spring turned to summer, I noticed subtle but significant changes in our interactions. Mom began asking directly for help when she needed it, a simple, "Could you help me understand this insurance form?" replacing her former insistence that everything was under control. Amanda stopped making passive-aggressive comments about my career and started sharing her own professional victories with genuine excitement, and I found myself more attentive to the unspoken needs behind their words, more present in our conversations rather than mentally tallying client deadlines during family calls. Last week, we held a small dinner celebration marking 6 months since implementing our recovery plan. I cooked Mom's favorite lasagna recipe, Amanda brought a homemade tiramisu, and we sat around the table in Mom's new apartment, the windows open to catch the summer breeze. "I never thought I'd say this," Mom said, raising her glass in a toast. But in some ways, what happened was a blessing in disguise. Not the fraud that was inexcusable, but the crisis that finally forced us to be honest with each other and ourselves. Amanda nodded, adding, "We're building something real now, not just pretending everything is fine when it isn't." Looking at their faces, Mom's more relaxed than I'd seen in years, Amanda's confident in a way that came from within rather than bravado. I felt a profound sense of gratitude amid the lingering sorrow over what we'd endured. "To new beginnings," I said, raising my glass to join their toast. "And to families that can break and still find their way back to each other." The betrayal I discovered last Thanksgiving will always be part of our family story. The trust that was broken can never be restored to exactly what it was before. But perhaps what we're building now is stronger precisely because we've acknowledged our capacity to hurt each other and chosen to heal together anyway. If you're watching this and dealing with family financial betrayal, know that recovery is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. It requires honesty, boundaries, and professional support. Most importantly, it requires everyone involved to commit to change. The warning signs were there long before the forgery, the evasive conversations about money, the defensiveness when financial topics arose, the increasing desperation disguised as normalcy. I missed them because I wasn't truly looking. I was too caught up in my own success story to read between the lines of theirs. Pride can be the enemy of authentic connection. My mother's pride prevented her from admitting her financial struggles. My sister's pride manifested as resentment rather than asking for help. And my own pride in my financial independence created distance when my family needed me most. True family support isn't just about providing money, it's about creating space for vulnerability, for admitting when things aren't okay. It's about building systems of mutual aid that respect everyone's dignity while acknowledging that sometimes we all need help. As I look toward the future, I see our family continuing to evolve. The relationship we're building isn't perfect, but it's real in a way it wasn't before. The facade has been stripped away, revealing the imperfect but loving connections underneath. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to greater honesty in a relationship? Or found that a crisis became the catalyst for necessary change? Share your experience in the comments below. And if you found value in my story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more authentic conversations about family dynamics and personal growth. Thank you for bearing witness to my family's journey through betrayal to a new beginning. Sometimes our deepest wounds become the doorways to our most meaningful healing.